In this lecture video, we are going to take a look at determination of chemical composition. Please read the OER textbook chapter 5.2. The homework associated with this lecture video is 5.2 of the Newton homework. So the determination of chemical composition is pretty much the calculation to figure out the percent composition or the mass percent of the element or specific element in the compound. For example, in order to find out mass percent, you are going to use the total mass of that element that you are interested. You are going to divide by the total mass of the compound and then multiply by 100. For example, if we want to figure out the mass percent of potassium in potassium phosphate, first you will need to know the chemical formula of potassium phosphate. You're going to learn this in the next videos, how to figure this out, but pretty much what we are going to find out is percent of potassium, which is K, right? So that means you will need to know the chemical symbol. Okay, so potassium phosphate, the chemical formula is contain potassium ion and phosphate ion. You are going to learn how to write these later in chapter 5.5. Okay, so don't worry about this yet, but pretty much what we are going to do is that we are going to make sure that the chemical formula of ionic compound would contain cation and anion in this case, by potassium and phosphate ion. So potassium contains positive 1 and phosphate is negative 3. Note that the 4 subscript is indicate the number of oxygen in phosphate. The superscript -3 is the charge of phosphate. So in this case, if you want to make sure that they are neutral or a neutral compound, you will need 3 potassium per 1 phosphate, right? Because potassium is positive 1. So therefore, the chemical formula of potassium phosphate would be K subscript 3 PO4. Okay, so again, you are going to learn how to write chemical formula of ionic compound in chapter 5.5. Okay, so don't worry about that yet. But what I'm going to talk about here is that I want to know, if we know the potassium phosphate chemical formula, how do I know the percent of potassium that's present in that? Okay, so pretty much what we can do is that we can find out the mass of potassium. So in this case would be 39.098, right? And because in potassium phosphate, there are 3 of them, right? Because you have subscript 3 after potassium, therefore you need to multiply total to get the total mass of potassium, you have to multiply mass of potassium by 3 because we have 3 potassium, and divide this by the total formula mass, which contains 3 potassium, right, plus 1 phosphorus. Okay, so the second one is the mass of phosphorus plus 4 of oxygen, right? So 4 times the mass of oxygen, and then you can multiply this by 100. If you do this correctly, the percent of potassium will come out equal to 55.259% of potassium. So pretty much, why do we care about this percent? Okay, so in the next lecture video, you are going to find out the chemical formula using the percent of the mass to find out how many each element should be present within the chemical formula. So that's what we're gonna be able to do, right? So by using this percent mass will allow us to later on help us to figure out the ratio between each element within the chemical formula. Okay, so this lecture is pretty straightforward. So pretty much you can find out the mass percent by using the total mass of the interest element divided by the total mass of the compound. Sometimes, which is the 5.3 that you are going to take a look at, is that we are going to use mass percent and we're going to convert that into how many atom of that element that is required per one formula. So we're going to take a look at that later. Okay, so pretty much the homework associated with this would be homework 5.2. Okay, so start working on that soon.